Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into college football picks and predictions for week number 6. I go through every single ranked game and give my score prediction. Guys, make sure you like the video down below. But let's get into this one. Beginning with one Friday night matchup, it is a 10:30 game. West Virginia traveling out west to BYU. BYU beats Colorado by 3. You'll take the win. They didn't cover. It was a road game. It was a raucous environment. And now BYU is sitting minus 18.5, undefeated at number 23 in the nation. They initially entered last week at number 25. West Virginia has been atrocious the past 2 weeks. Yes, they were without their starting quarterback this past week. Maybe he's back. BYU originally opened around minus 20. There's some money on West Virginia. People thinking, well, maybe it's another Friday night crazy upset like we saw with FSU and Virginia. I highly doubt it considering BYU is at home in this one. I do not think this game will be close based on West Virginia's past few weeks and their performances. BYU at home, you could say run up the score here a little bit, wins 34-10. That is an 18.5 point cover. They win that game by 24 there. Moving on to the Saturday games, the noon window, it is Georgia sitting minus 22.5, taking on Kentucky. This is a Georgia team coming off the tough loss to Alabama. Close game. They had a drop touchdown. They very easily could have won that game. And Kentucky's been very, very bad the past 2 weeks, especially offensively. I think this is a total mismatch, especially when you look at Georgia's defense versus Kentucky's offense. This is a get-right game for Georgia. I see a lot of Georgia fans down on Kirby Smart, the issues against Alabama, sitting minus 22.5 in this one. People say, well, maybe it's Kentucky. I actually think Georgia's like minus 20.5 now. I believe the line has been bet down a little bit. But either way, I think Georgia covers. They win this game 38-7. They swarm Kentucky. Georgia's offense can be good enough, especially against a team like Kentucky, to score into the 30s. And I do think it is the mismatch of Georgia's defense against Kentucky's offense and just how bad UK and their offense have been the past few weeks. Georgia at home. It's a get-right game for them. They were at home last week. They lost. There's no travel. They're at home again. And I think they crush Kentucky. I believe Kentucky is coming off of a bye, but no. Kentucky is coming off of a bad loss to South Carolina, excuse me. I think they lost that game 37 to 13 or something like that. So I think Georgia wins this game easily, 38-7 in that one. We've got an interesting game here. This is Iowa State traveling to Cincinnati. Cincinnati, a slight favorite in this one. I have not been high on Iowa State. I thought they would be really challenged last week against Arizona. They impressed me. I give them credit for that. They're at number 14 in the country. They are undefeated. Cincinnati's an interesting, feisty team. They got an impressive win themselves going on the road at Kansas, winning a higher scoring game 37-34. But I will take, believe it or not, even though I've been down on them this year, I will take Iowa State. I do see decent value. They are an analytical slight favorite in this one, although it's virtually a pick 'em, let's be honest. Give me Iowa State to go on the road. I still think Iowa State loses a few games. They're probably going to lose at TCU. They're likely going to lose another game at home. But this game on the road at Cincinnati, it's palatable for them. I do think they have that slight talent advantage. This is really like a pick 'em, flip a coin. I'll trust Iowa State more than I will Cincy in this one, even though Cincy's got a veteran QB, the transfer from Indiana, the multi-year starter, Brendan Sorsby, who's been impressive this year. I will take Iowa State. If Cincinnati wins this game, they would very likely be ranked with just one loss and a win against Iowa State. But I'll go with Iowa State to hold strong here and to win outright. I've seen some lines where they're 2.5 point underdogs, 1.5 point underdog. There's been some money seemingly bet on Cincy. I'll go with Iowa State to win this game outright. You would think this would be the big noon game, but it's not. This is actually the big noon game. It is Michigan hosting Wisconsin. So Michigan coming off a bye, Wisconsin coming off a bye. Wisconsin got crushed a few weeks ago in Tuscaloosa. Then they lost at home to Maryland, a game in which they were around 10-point favorites. Michigan moved down a spot in the rankings. They beat Nebraska only by 3, but that game, it should have been a lot worse than the final score indicated. Michigan thoroughly dominated Nebraska. Now they're sitting minus 16.5 in this one. I think this is going to be a Michigan defense versus Wisconsin offense mismatch. I would be surprised if Wisconsin scored 14 points in this one. I just don't see it. Now, I do believe that Wisconsin's defense will slow down Michigan, the young QB Bryce Underwood, the lack of overall offensive weapons. You could be looking at maybe a 10-3 game, a 13-3 game at half, something along those lines. But over time, Michigan should really take control of this one. I do think they covered that 16.5 point spread. I believe the over-under is only in the mid-40s in this one, but I still like the under just because the matchup of Michigan's defense against Wisconsin's offense, Wisconsin just has a very limited amount, or basically no, really elite skill position players. Danny O'Neal, the quarterback, doesn't wow me. And they have been, the past few years, people talking about Luke Fickell, possibly his seat being very hot, considering Wisconsin is going in the opposite direction. They're going backwards. They have looked very bad this year. Now they're 16.5 point underdogs at Michigan. Maybe they'll surprise everyone after the bye. They'll be galvanized. They'll come out and play hard. But this is still a very good Michigan defense. You've got Sharon Moore coming off the suspension, and you have a developing Bryce Underwood. But I will say, I think Michigan, their upside is limited to a degree because of the lack of elite receivers, the lack of elite skill position players. Yes, they have Justice Haynes, really good young running back who's extremely fast. But to me, in a matchup like this, I do think Michigan obviously is significantly more talented and they're at home. So you got to go with them with a relatively easy victory there. Next, you've got the Illini, Illinois traveling to Purdue to take on the Boilermakers. Purdue coming off a bye, Illinois coming off a very emotional home win, a game in which honestly they deserved to win by like 7 points. They ended up winning on a walk-off field goal. Illinois, I will say, I'll give them credit. They did impress me, and I do think they deserve to be ranked. I mean, you beat USC at home. It's a game in which you very easily could have won by more. You had some red zone mishaps. And I was surprised that offense was able to generate 500 yards in total against USC, and they really controlled the line of scrimmage. But let's think about this. This is an 11 a.m. local time start. Or no, I actually think it's a noon start. I think Indiana is Eastern time. But either way, this is an early start. Illinois is coming off a very emotional, heartfelt win. I think this game against Purdue, believe it or not, is going to be close. I think the Illini win. If you look at their schedule, they had the huge big noon game against USC. Now they've got Purdue, and then after this week, they've got Ohio State at home. So this game is kind of pencil-necked in between the two huge games that are both at home. So I think maybe Illinois looks past Purdue. Purdue is actually not a bad team this year. I'm not even kidding you. They're a decent team. They can throw the ball a little bit. They scored 30 points against Notre Dame. Yeah, you could say Notre Dame's defense is not the best, but still, I think Purdue surprisingly keeps this game close. And people wondering, how is that spread only 10.5? Well, Illinois, people still might be overrating them a little bit overall just because the overall roster talent is not there. And also Purdue is, believe it or not a terrible team like they've been. I mean, they've been anemic the past few years to where you could argue they're the worst team in the Big Ten. Certainly not this year. You've got Northwestern, you've got UCLA. You could argue Purdue is certainly not a bottom four team. They can throw the ball a little bit. I think Purdue is going to be surprisingly competitive in this one. It's an early start. You can understand it. Next, we've got the 3:30 window. It is Penn State traveling to UCLA. So this is a 12:30 Pacific time start. Penn State sitting around minus 25.5 in this one. You know, I went back and forth on this game. You look at Penn State now at number 7 in the country. Pretty much everyone thinks they're overrated. They lose to Oregon, but let's be honest, they lost in overtime to Oregon. Although, to also be honest, they did look terrible the first 3 quarters offensively. They do have a serious lack of skill position players. There's a reason they're minus 25.5, though, on the road. There's a reason they've got a 93% chance to win. UCLA at this point is 0-4. They're coming off a loss to Northwestern, a spread that they did cover. You know, it's interesting. I think Penn State right now is 0-4 against the spread. They're going to cover one of these games. I think they cover this game, 34-7. You could argue that maybe there's slight value on UCLA because I was comparing some different matchups analytically, and it seems like UCLA really should be around plus 22.5 or 23.5 in this one. But Penn State has a great defense. UCLA, there is the idea of, they've got the interim head coach. They're going to galvanize at home around him, going up against the Penn State team coming off an emotional letdown. Loss at home, now traveling East Coast to West Coast. I could buy that. I could. But UCLA, they're just not there. They're terrible. Let's not overthink this. Are we really going to say that Penn State's going to start the year at this point, 0-5, 0-6 against the spread? I just don't see it. I think Penn State wins this game. They cover. 34-7 in that one. Next, we've got Texas traveling on the road to Florida. Both of these teams coming off a bye. Texas, they're at number 9 in the country. Texas at this point, they're an enigma. You look at the matchups in this game. I love Texas's defense against Florida's offense. Florida, you could say Billy Napier, dead man walking. Will they be able to come up with the booster money to facilitate the buyout and to get rid of him? Probably. You look at people around Florida talking about it. 7.5 points is a tough spread because Florida, you look at this game, oh, they're 1-3, they're terrible. No, they've had a tough schedule. They had the brutal heartbreak loss to South Florida, but they've still got a talented team. So it's not like this is a guaranteed Texas 25-point road win. But I will say, if you're looking at the units in this game, I trust Texas's defense the most by far. And you look at Texas's offense, you don't want to say, oh, Arch Manning is back because of what he did against Sam Houston State, although he did look very good in that game. But Arch Manning is still a young quarterback. A lot of people grade him very harshly. They say he's overrated because of the Manning name, and I get it. But let's let him grow a little bit. This is a game in the swamp. It's a tough environment. Florida, for it, the fact that they're 1-3, they're the best 1-3 team in college football. And I'm not saying that to be funny. I mean, they're not as bad as the record. I'm not saying they're a great team, but they do have a significant amount of talent. It's a very hostile environment. It's still early in the season. It's not like the fans have given up on the season completely. I mean, you could say behind the scenes with the coaching situation, yes, there is some of that, but they're going to try and develop their young quarterback. I think Texas wins this game, however, 27-13, because that's a Texas defense that can suffocate a young QB, and they cover the 7.5-point spread. Not a great spread line, you could argue. Maybe a little bit lower scoring, maybe a 24-13 type game. I like the under in this one. I don't see there being a ton of offense generated. I think Florida's defense plays together. They're coming off a bye. They're facing an Arch Manning QB, a young quarterback who has struggled early this season. You're looking at a lower scoring game, but I just trust Texas and their defense overall more, and they win this game, although Florida is due for a cover. So it's challenging, but I do have to go Texas minus the 7.5 in that one. Next, we've got Alabama taking on Vanderbilt. This is a 10v16 matchup. Bama sitting minus 10.5. I believe that line has been bet down to 9.5, so it's at minus 9.5. Bama given a 74% chance to win. So I think Bama's going to do very, very well in this matchup. If you look at just the overall numbers, the analytical data, and Vanderbilt against Bama and how these teams match up, to me, Vanderbilt is kind of being graded on a curve because we're so used to Vandy being bad. I mean, I guess last year they had the upset win against Bama. I mean, that's actually another aspect of this game. Remember last year, Alabama loses on the road at Vanderbilt in the crazy upset loss when Alabama was ranked, number 1 in the country? But guys, Vanderbilt's defense is not good. They gave up 35 points to Utah State. They've given up a lot. They gave up 21 points to Georgia State. This is a team that's being graded on a curve because we're not used to them being good. This is the supposed 16th best team in college football. They are not a good defensive team. Alabama, the reason I picked Georgia to beat Bama is because Bama cannot run the ball. Now, they still were able to win that game. That was a little bit of an outlier. I think Georgia probably should have won that game. But that doesn't mean I don't like Bama. Bama with Ty Simpson. Ty Simpson looks like an emerging, possibly top 3 quarterback in college football. You put him at home against a bad defense with all of the skill position receivers that Bama has. I think Bama wins this game, and it's an exaggerated margin. I could see something like 45-24 or even 48-27, something like that. It's going to be a higher scoring game for sure. But Bama wins, and they easily cover. There's going to be a lot of people that say, "Oh, Bama, they're overrated," because if you look at the analytics, they are rating Bama as a 9 or a 10-point favorite in this game as a top 3 or top 4 team in college football. Is there a time in which Bama can reach that potential? Yes, it's at home against a bad defensive team. And that's exactly what Vanderbilt is. They are not a good defensive team. They're being graded on a curve. Alabama, I think, wins this game very, very easily. Next, you've got Notre Dame taking on Boise State. Notre Dame now at number 21 in the country. So there's a few things with this game. There is a lot of people that are going to go in on Notre Dame. And I guess I'll say, at the beginning, I am one of them as well. I think Notre Dame wins and covers. Notre Dame destroyed Arkansas. They have by far the best running back tandem in college football. It's not even close. It's really not comparable with the Penn State tandem. Notre Dame, CJ Carr, the young quarterback, is a stud. He looks really good. Boise State, on the other hand, they lost week 1. Everyone forgot about them. Genty leaves. but they've been playing better. They just crushed Appalachian State. They were 13 or 14 point favorites. They won by like 30. But with Notre Dame, to me, this is one of those, let's not overthink it. I think this spread is now 18.5, so there's been money coming in on Notre Dame. It doesn't surprise me. Notre Dame's offense has been unbelievable. And there's a 3:30 mid-afternoon game, NBC. I think Notre Dame wins this game easily. Notre Dame knows that if they want to make the playoff, they're going to have to win these games impressively. The problem for Notre Dame is now if USC loses to Michigan, Notre Dame possibly will not have a ranked win. Or do they? Well, yeah, because they lost to Miami. So it's like, will Notre Dame even get a ranked win this year? We can sit here and say, well, Notre Dame's going to make the playoff at 10-2. Yeah, I don't know about that if USC turns out to be a bad team, because that's like the only great team they have left on their schedule. So Notre Dame has to win these games handily if they want to have a chance to make the playoff. The issue for Notre Dame is there's no, they're not in a conference, so there's no potential for a conference championship. So I'd say Notre Dame wins this game very, very easily, I think. Next, we've got Louisville hosting Virginia. Virginia at number 24 in college football. So they ranked Virginia, and now they're about a touchdown underdog to an unranked team on the road. I don't mind Virginia. I thought Virginia would compete and possibly upset FSU. I give them credit for that. I think people are going to see a lot of value on Virginia in this game. I mean, Louisville is only given a 56% chance to win. That would seem to be great value on Virginia to cover a touchdown spread, but I think Louisville wins this game and shockingly covers. People are going to be very angry. They're going to be shocked. They're going to be surprised. Louisville is not a team that really anyone has been talking about. They are undefeated. They've already had a bye. They've had an easy schedule. But I think Louisville wins this game at home, and they surprisingly cover. There's going to be a lot of normies going on Virginia plus a 6.5. They're going to be very disappointed when Louisville wins this game by 7. And I even agree with them. I would say there is good value on Louisville plus 6.5. We just see these things every week in college football and how the betting goes. You think, how can Louisville, an unranked team, be 6.5 point favorites against a ranked team that just beat FSU? Well, that's a ranked win on the road, or that's a ranked win at home. Now you're going on the road. This is a letdown. It's a letdown. It's unfortunate. The spread, you could say it doesn't make sense. And honestly, again, analytically, there's value on Virginia plus a 6.5, but not all the time is that going to work out. Moving on to the 4 o'clock game, it is Oklahoma hosting Penn State. Oklahoma without their starting quarterback, Mateer. We'll see if he's back for the Texas Red River rivalry game. But they are going with Michael Hawkins Jr., who did play a little bit last year. He's going to be fighting against Kent State. Kent State is like an FCS level team. Oklahoma sitting minus 45.5. They win this game easily. Will they cover the 45? I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and speculate on that. I think it's honestly, I would say no. Because if you want a little inside scoop, Kent State's actually a lot better than they were last year. They're still terrible, but they are better. But it's like, this is a backup QB. What are we doing? 45.5? I don't know. 52-7. They win by 45. Next, we're going on to the 7 o'clock games. It is Texas Tech traveling to Houston. So Houston is undefeated. So is Texas Tech. Texas Tech is coming off a bye. I was watching Texas Tech against Utah, and I would imagine people would say, well, you were really impressed. Honestly, I really wasn't. I thought Texas Tech was an extremely undisciplined team. They made a lot of bad mental errors. Yeah, they won the game. They covered the spread. I picked them to cover. I appreciate that. But I think people might be overrating Texas Tech a little bit. This is a Houston team that did struggle last week, I'll admit. Facing an Oregon State team. It was a Friday night game. Connor Wigman, the transfer, remember him from A&M? Former 5-star QB. Texas Tech sitting minus 12.5. Give me Houston with the cover in this game. I think it's a higher scoring game. I think Tech gets the win. Houston's going to be ready. They're undefeated. They're trying to be ranked. They're facing almost a top 10 team. They're at home. It's going to be a sellout and great environment. They've got a relatively new stadium there. I think Houston comes to play. I think Houston makes this a close game. Texas Tech dealing with a possible QB injury as well, although they did have a bye. I like Houston plus the 12.5. Texas Tech wins this game very narrowly. Moving on to the 7:30 games, it is Ohio State taking on Minnesota. Ohio State sitting 23.5. Minnesota. Ohio State given a 95% chance to win. Yeah. I mean, what can you even say about a game like this? Minnesota does have a good young quarterback, Drake Lindsey. You could argue Drake Lindsey possibly better than Julian Sayin. Julian Sayin is turning into Alex Smith. They're not having him throw the ball down the field. Maybe he will throw the ball down the field in this game. try and open it up a little bit. But Ohio State, the way they play is they limit possessions, they have long drives, and they stop you in the red zone. That's basically what Ohio State does. This is the issue for Minnesota. Ohio State has not allowed a single team this year to score double digits. Is Minnesota going to be the first? I think it's kind of unlikely. If the spread's only 23.5, I mean, I think Ohio State can get into the 30s at home against Minnesota. Let's be honest. So I think Ohio State easily covers in this game. They win by 34, 41-7. They do have one of the best defenses in college football. They have the best receiver core in college football, the most talented receivers in college football, a good young emerging true freshman running back in Bo Jackson. Minnesota, they did beat Rutgers, give them credit. It was at home. It was a 3-point win. But this is Minnesota we're talking about. Remember, Ohio State faced Minnesota a few years ago. They won 37-3 at home. They're just going to suffocate them. And I think 23.5 is actually good value on Ohio State. Next, we've got, this is the big-time game of the week. It is Miami traveling to take on Florida State in Tallahassee. This is a 3v18 matchup. It would have been a top 10 matchup for sure if FSU didn't get upset last Friday. Miami now sitting -4.5. There's been some money on FSU. I will say I agree with that 100%. Miami given a 65% chance to win. This is the premier 7:30 ABC game. FSU, that's a disappointing loss. Miami coming off a bye. People arguing maybe Miami should be the #1 team in college football. They've got a great resume. In a matchup like this, ACC battle, I think, and I don't really hate Miami, but I'm going to go with FSU to win this game. I'm going to go with the home team. Miami, to me, has kind of been overrated at this point. Like, let's understand what Miami is. Yes, they beat Notre Dame. Those week 1 games, honestly, I don't put a ton of stock into them. Although, I guess, that's kind of Florida State's entire resume is their week 1 win over Alabama. But really, it's a combination of factors. Is Carson Beck really this superstar? Seriously? I don't think so. Like, let's pump the brakes. Carson Beck, he is what he is. He's like a pocket passer QB who's going to throw some interceptions. This is a tough environment for him. I like the value on FSU, and I'm not even that huge of a fan of FSU. I said they would probably lose to Virginia. But look, they do have an emerging hybrid like tight end receiver, Deuce Robinson, who's a former 5-star. He looks amazing. So it's like now Castellanos has an actual threat, and I feel more comfortable with taking FSU in this matchup. I think FSU wins, and it's not like a terrible loss for Miami. Miami's going to bounce back and then beat Louisville the week after this week, or next week, I should say. It's better grammar, but I will be taking FSU to win this game. Fun game, ACC matchup. The ACC is close. I don't see Miami running the table and going undefeated in the regular season and finishing 12-0. I think they could finish 11-1. FSU needs this game. They already have 1 loss in conference. And so I think FSU gets it at home. And I think this is probably the ACC championship we're looking at right here. This is the final game that involves a ranked team of the week. It is Texas A&M sitting -14.5, taking on Mississippi State. A&M up to number 6 in the country. Surprising. A&M is coming off a win over Auburn, a game in which I thought they probably should have won by more. A&M sitting -14.5. Not a great line. We'd like to get like 13.5 or 14 maybe. Mississippi State, I think Mississippi State is getting overrated a little bit. Tennessee tried throwing that game away. People look at that game and they say, well, Mississippi State only has 1 loss and it's against a good Tennessee team. And it was in overtime. I don't know. I think A&M easily wins this game. I thought A&M was going to cover last week. They didn't. I think they cover this week. A&M struggled passing last week. They're going to do better. They win this game 35-17. People are going to be surprised A&M covers this spread because it is a big spread. There's a lot of people saying that Mississippi State should be ranked right now. But I have A&M winning that game and covering there. So guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you like the video down below. Also follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.